Welcome to the future. Get ready to explore how spirituality and science will come together in the Age of Aquarius. Hosted by JC Nova. Today I'm talking with author Robert Waggoner, one of the most interesting lucid dream teachers in the Western world. He wrote the acclaimed book, Lucid Dreaming: Gateway to the Inner Self, and co-authored Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple with Caroline McCready. Robert shares how we can take control of our dreams, if they can predict the future, and reveals some of his own dream experiences. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Robert. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here.
I'm going to dive right in. How did you first become interested in lucid dreaming?
When I was a child, I just had a fascinating dream life. Occasionally, I'd have precognitive dreams. I'd have very vivid dreams. I was just interested in dreaming altogether. But it was in 1975, I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan. And in that book, his shamanic teacher, Don Juan, suggests to him that he become consciously aware in the dream state by finding his hands. And I thought, wait a second, can you really do that? I'd never heard of that idea before. And so that night before I went to sleep, I just created my own technique because there really wasn't one in the book. And 3 nights later, my hands popped in front of my face and I became lucidly aware. So it was a real amazing lucid dream, that very first one.
Do you have any lucid dreams that you remember vividly from the time you were a child?
Well, when I was 10 or 11 years old, I had a spontaneous lucid dream. If you can imagine, I was in the public library looking at the books. And all of a sudden, down the hallway comes a little Tyrannosaurus Rex. Just a little baby 3 or 4 foot Tyrannosaurus Rex. I thought for a second, wait a second, how can this be? Dinosaurs are extinct. And there in my 10 or 11-year-old mind, it finally hit me that, oh, I have to be dreaming. This is a dream. And so I thought, well, wait a second. If I'm dreaming, then I can tell myself to wake up. And I told myself, wake up. And I woke up and discovered that, yes, in fact, I had been dreaming. And that was my very first spontaneous lucid dream.
And what do you think that dream meant?
Well, in terms of symbolism, I haven't thought about it too much. Normally, a library is a place of learning and knowledge, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex is something ancient. And so you might say that the capacity to lucid dream is really an ancient ability that we all have. In Tibetan Buddhist dream yoga, they've been talking about lucid dreaming for basically 2,000 years. And some of the Buddhists say that actually shamanic groups in Tibet before the advent of Buddhism talked about lucid dreaming for thousands of years before that. And then there's some suggestion that ancient shamanic people here in North America, as well as ancient Egypt and India, also knew about lucid dreaming. So it is one of those interesting ancient practices that's been scientifically validated since 1980. It's truly an amazing thing.
So can you explain to listeners what the difference is between dreaming and lucid dreaming?
Right. So a lucid dream is any dream in which you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. You literally know, hey, wait a second, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this. And so that's a lucid dream. You know that you're dreaming. Now, a regular dream, we just pretty much accept whatever happens. In a regular dream, I see a dinosaur walk down the street and I'd think, oh, well, dinosaurs have come back. Oh, that's interesting. And I'd go get the newspaper and come back into the house. In a normal dream, you just accept whatever happens. You just go along with it. You might be driving a car, then you're in a motorcycle, then you're on a skateboard. You just go with it. But in a lucid dream, you think, wait a second, this is a dream, I'm dreaming this. And once you know that you're lucidly aware, then you have some capacity to influence and direct yourself within the lucid dream. So I'm not going to say you control the dream. I think that's too big a word. but you can direct yourself within the lucid dream.
How are lucid dreams related to out-of-body experiences?
When people ask me about that, normally I liken it to a house cat and a mountain lion. They're both from the feline family, and so they both have a nice fuzzy tail and cat ears and all that kind of thing. But a house cat you'd take home, and a mountain lion you'd just leave outside in the wilderness. They're both states of awareness that are largely what I would call mental. And so in a lucid dream, again, you realize within a dream that you're dreaming. But an out-of-body experience might occur when you've had a heart attack, and all of a sudden you're floating against the ceiling, looking down at the doctors and nurses trying to revive your heart. So that's not realizing within a dream that you're dreaming. That's having a medical emergency. Or you might be falling asleep some night and start to hear this humming and buzzing around your body or around your head, and then realize that you're viewing the bedroom from 6 feet above the bed. That would be what I would call a out-of-body experience, and it's not realizing within a dream that you're dreaming. There's kind of the father of out-of-body experiences, Robert Monroe, and he said that lucid dreams and out-of-bodies were two different things, because in an out-of-body state, he said the environment was stable, but in the lucid dream state, it reflects your mind, and so because the mind is apt to wander, the lucid dream environment is much less stable than the OBE environment.
Can lucid dreaming be dangerous?
You know, millions of people every night have lucid dreams. It's interesting, there was a study by Ursula Voss in Germany of German school children ages 6 to 19. They interviewed hundreds of them to see if they'd ever had a lucid dream. And I believe if I read the study correctly, 20% of the 8-year-olds had already had a spontaneous lucid dream. And of the entire group, a little bit over 50% had had a lucid dream. So I want to say that lucid dreaming is natural and spontaneous and happens to the vast majority of folks. Is it dangerous? I don't think so. You normally hear the exact opposite, that people wake from a lucid dream, they're excited, they're happy, they've had their mind blown, they've just had so much fun. But on occasion, you might read of a lucid dream experience where the person had a fearful encounter and woke up a little bit shaken. But I honestly don't think that lucid dreaming is any more dangerous than being consciously aware in this moment.
I lucid dream. I had one dream that I've had a few times that stands out to me. In Australia, there's this famous beach with little penguins. It's super cute. They come out at night, just at dusk, and there'll be hundreds of penguins, little penguins running out into the water. So I'm traveling with my son, and we're going to this beach house by this penguin beach. And so I get there and my family's there, my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, who have all passed. And then it's my son and me. And my grandmother opens the door and I say, "Where's my mom?" And she says, "Oh, that's not your mom, that's your sister." And then the person sitting on the couch is actually my mom. And I don't have a sister. And then when I refer to my son, she's like, "Oh, that's not your son, that's your brother." And so I keep having this like reoccurring dream, like I'm meeting him at this beach house. And I realize in the middle of my dream, like, oh, I'm having this dream again. I'm always trying to figure out what it means. Is like, oh, okay, maybe I'm connecting with my family. You know, they're in the afterlife now. And so that's my way of reconnecting with them. I don't know. When people have dreams of loved ones that have passed, what do you think about that? Is that just a way for them to reconnect with people they love? It
varies. People dreaming of the deceased is actually quite common. There's a lovely book by Patricia Garfield called, I think it's called Dream Messengers, Visitations from the Deceased. And she describes all the different types of those kind of dreams. Now, the beautiful thing about a lucid dream is when you realize, hey, wait a second, this is a dream, then you can try to determine, am I meeting a symbol of my grief? and meeting my deceased uncle or aunt or father or mother or whomever? Or am I meeting someone who actually exists in the afterlife or has a presence in the afterlife? And I remember once I saw a ladder, and coming down the ladder was my father. And I immediately became lucid because I remembered that my dad had died 3 years earlier. And so I began to think, well, wait a second, is this my father as a dream symbol, as a symbol of my missing him? Or is this my father as a spiritual being? So he came down and we greeted each other, and I began to ask him questions. My first question was, hey, Dad, you're from the land of the dead. When do you think mom's going to pass away? And he said, probably in 2 to 6 years. I said, of what? He said, a heart condition. And that really surprised me because my mom had never had any heart troubles. And then I asked him one more question. He responded. And then he told me to please be quiet because he came to tell me things. And for the next 10 minutes, he told me things about the family. And so when I woke up from that lucid dream, I made some careful notes. And it was about 23 months later, almost 2 years exactly later, my mom went to the hospital and almost died of a heart condition. And then about 3 years after that, she went back to the hospital and almost died again from a heart condition. And this one was caused by some prescribed medications that people later learned were actually harming people's hearts. But she made it through that 2 to 6 year period. What I'm trying to get across here is it's hard to know what you've encountered unless you ask questions. And if you can get some information that's outside of your knowing that you can verify in the morning or later sometime, then at least it'll give you a sense of what you encountered in that experience.
I will have to remember next time I have that dream, if I have it anytime soon, to ask, what are we doing? Why are we here? Besides the fact that I love the Penguin Beach, but maybe that's just my way of visiting the beach and bringing my family along with me.
Well, what's a little bit interesting about that, JC, because your grandmother or whomever is basically telling you that you're not getting the relationships correct. Well, one thing that's really interesting in lucid dreams is to go look into a mirror. Oftentimes, the face looking back at you is not the person laying in bed. I've really been surprised. I would say about half the times I look in a mirror in a lucid dream, it's not Robert looking back at me. It's someone or something else. So anyway, if you keep a mirror in your purse, and the next time you have that dream, pull out the mirror and see who she's actually talking to.
That's interesting. Wow, I will have to remember that. Do you think that lucid dreaming is a way for physical and emotional healing? Is that like kind of similar to what we're talking about, where we can actually mend relationships with others? Because my lucid dreams tend to be people popping up in my dreams and me having a conversation with them and me realizing that I'm dreaming.
So one thing I'd say about dreaming and also lucid dreaming, I think it's a way that we receive information and exchange information to various parts of ourself, our physical self, our spiritual self, our mental self, or whatever self. And also, I think it's a way that we also take on energy as well. During a normal dream and afterwards, that's really some of the busiest hormonal time that a person has. And so I think there's some sort of communication that's occurring. But I do think that lucid dreaming and dreaming help us with healing, with our own personal physical body regulation and also emotional healing. Studies have shown how just regular dreaming helps with emotional processing, helps with associations, helps with creative responses to perplexing problems and that kind of thing. And it's just magnified in the lucid dream state. So yeah, I think dreaming and lucid dreaming just have extraordinary potential that most people don't realize.
What would you say to someone if they're saying, what are some tips that you could give someone that wanted to learn how to lucid dream? Is there like any particular preparations that they should do before they go to sleep or anything like that?
One thing that a person wants to do is start to increase their dream recall, because you don't want to have a lucid dream and then have such poor dream recall that you don't remember it in the morning or forget it altogether. So you want to get a dream journal going or a dream audiobook on your phone or whatever, but somehow you want to increase your dream recall. And then there's a variety of techniques to become lucidly aware. In my second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, I and my co-author, Carolyn McCready, we give about a dozen just very successful lucid dream induction techniques. One of them is something that most anybody can use, which is the power of suggestion. Remember earlier, I was mentioning how in a normal dream, we just accept whatever happens. We walk down the sidewalk and coming down the other sidewalk is a famous actress. And we just think, wow, a famous actress is in the neighborhood. It never makes us stop and think, wait a second, how could that be? This must be a dream. So here would be a suggestion that would help with something like that. Before you go to sleep, just, try to erase the day activities from your mind and then tell yourself, tonight in my dreams, I'll be more critically aware. And when I notice something strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So tonight in my dreams, I'll be more critically aware. And when I notice something strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. And so by doing that, you kind of prep your critical awareness, your mindfulness, to be more active in the dream state. And so instead of seeing something strange happen or meeting a bunch of deceased people and just kind of accepting it, all of a sudden you go, wait a second, this is too strange. This must be a dream. I'm lucid dreaming. And so just by using the power of suggestion, you can truly increase the likelihood of having a lucid dream.
What areas have you explored through lucid dreaming? Are you using it as a tool to learn or to visit new places or to have conversations with yourself about, sometimes we feel things on a subconscious level that we're not aware of on a conscious level?
Right. So I taught myself how to lucid dream in 1975. The scientific evidence for lucid dreaming came out around 1980, 81. And that was great because I already had 5 years of lucid dreaming experience and really had a good sense of the technical aspects of lucid dreaming. But as I went deeper and deeper into lucid dreaming, first I realized that lucid dreaming allows you to access creativity. But for example, you could become lucidly aware and announce, when I walk into that next room, I'll see the most incredible art I can create. And you walk into the next room and hanging on the wall is incredible art. Or if you're a musician, you could say, when I walk into that next room, I'll hear the most incredible music that I could create. And you walk into that next room and suddenly you're hearing this amazing musical composition. And all you have to do is remember it and wake up with it. So I think that was the first thing I realized, that lucid dreaming really allows us to access that unconscious creative aspect of ourselves. Then the next thing I realized in 1985, I was part of a Lucid Dream Explorers group, and we were doing a goal each month. And that month, it was to find out what the dream figures in your lucid dream represent. And I followed a woman into an office, lucidly aware. I went up to a gentleman and I asked him, excuse me, what do you represent? And instead of the gentleman responding, a voice boomed out a response from above him. And when I woke up, I thought, that was weird. Why didn't the dream figure respond? Why did this non-visible voice respond? And then I began to think, is there an awareness behind the dream? In a lucid dream, could you ignore the dream figures and just ask questions of your unconscious mind or your inner self? And so starting in 1985, that's what I started to do. I would stop in a lucid dream. I would ignore the dream figures and I ignore the dream setting. And I would just shout out questions to this non-visible awareness. I'd say, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. And sometimes the entire lucid dream would change. Or sometimes one symbol would appear, one dream object would appear that was somehow significant or important. And I began to explore this really deeply. That's why I call my first book, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self. Thousands of other people have read my book and done exactly the same thing. They've begun to encounter this inner self and really learn from it. I just have some wonderful stories of people who've used it for emotional healing, for all sorts of healing, overcome drug addiction, and all sorts of amazing things. It's truly fascinating. But besides that, you can also use lucid dreaming for emotional healing. I feel you can use lucid dreaming to promote physical health or overcome some physical issues. Also, you can use lucid dreaming to perform spiritual practices. Like you can meditate in a lucid dream, or you can do whatever spiritual practice is important to you. You can do it in a lucid dream. And I'll tell you, if it's like meditation or something like that, within 30 seconds, you will be having the most profound experience that you've probably ever had. Lucid dreaming is an open platform. From lucid dreaming, you can explore virtually everything and anything if you know how, and if you know how to go about it. So that's why, I write books and try to educate people about the deeper potential of lucid dreaming.
What are some of the current studies that you're aware of that maybe scientists or psychologists may be doing around dreaming and lucid dreaming?
Right. So just to help folks who might not be aware of how they scientifically validated lucid dreaming, it was back in the mid 70s. By that time, people realized that we normally have rapid eye movement when we're dreaming. And so they wondered, could you bring a lucid dreamer into the sleep lab and tell the person, okay, when you become consciously aware within the dream, we want you to move your eyes left to right 8 times. Hopefully your physical eyes will move, and that'll make such an unusual chart pattern on our rapid eye movement polygraph pad chart that'll provide evidence for lucid dreaming. And so that happened at the University of Hull in April 12th, 1975. And that was kind of the beginning of the science of lucid dreaming. But other research they've done is some neurologists wanted to see, well, what does the brain activity look like in a lucid dream? And so they'd bring lucid dreamers into the sleep lab and they'd tell them again, move your eyes left to right 8 times when you become aware of dreaming. So we'll know that at that moment you're lucidly aware. And so they put these 19-channel EEG electroencephalogram skull caps on them to measure their brain activity in the dream and the lucid dream state. And what was interesting is that when the people signaled, hey, I'm lucidly aware in here, all of a sudden, the top portion of their brain, the cerebral cortex, all of a sudden, and people consider it the newer part of the brain, all of a sudden it became quite active. And so that's connected with self-perception and making decisions and self-assessment and all that kind of thing. And so neurologically, they called it a hybrid state of consciousness because the dreaming brain is active at the same time that the consciously aware portions of the brain begin to light up. But there's been a lot of studies about interacting with dream figures in lucid dreams, surveys about how widespread is lucid dreaming. There's been a lot of research done on the state of lucid dreaming.
So I want to switch over and talk about the Age of Aquarius. And I'm always thinking about lucid dreaming and psychic ability and intuitive awareness. What do you think we might see in the Age of Aquarius and how dreaming and lucid dreaming will become part of our everyday life?
I recall back in the 60s, I think it was the Beatles went to India and learned how to meditate. And all of a sudden people were wondering, what does it mean to learn how to meditate? What's that all about? And in some regards, I think that lucid dreaming is the new, or this generation's spiritual connection, how they can connect with their inner awareness, how they can learn about the incredible potential of lucid dreaming. And so I think it has really an extraordinary following out there because all of us dream. Every night, we normally spend about 23% of the sleep state in dreaming. And why is that? Why do we dream? When you go back into spiritual literature since biblical times and beyond, there's numerous examples of prophetic dreams, of visionary dreams, of dreams that were very helpful and like you say, psi-oriented. But in a lucid dream, you have the capacity to explore that. You can explore getting information outside of your own knowing and waking up and seeing if you got it correctly or incorrectly and what your batting average is to be. So I think lucid dreaming is really going to be one of these ways to connect the waking self with the undiscovered self, with our inner self. And it's going to be through the conduit of lucid dreaming.
Have you ever asked your lucid dreams for specific information about the future? I know you shared the dream that you had with your father about your mother's health, but have you specifically asked about more futuristic information?
I have. I share some of the stories in my first book about trying to get information outside of space and time. I remember one time I became lucidly aware and I saw a friend of mine and I knew he had a serious girlfriend. And so I asked him, a year from now, will you be married? He surprised me by saying no. And I said, a year from now, where will you be living? Because he'd been talking about moving to Hong Kong, but instead he answered the name of a different city. And it was a year later. He did not marry that woman. They parted ways, and he was living in the town that he said in the lucid dream that he would be living in. That's kind of a simple example of getting some information outside of your own knowing. But I think if you become good at lucid dreaming, you could begin to play around with, seeking out information and see what happens in your particular case.
Did you share that information with your friend before it happened or after the fact or ever?
I don't know if I shared it with him. My friend was one of those kind of private people, and that's probably why I decided in a lucid dream to find out what was really going on. It's fun to have those kind of situations. I recall another lucid dream where I found myself in a small town at a phone booth at night. And all of a sudden, I realized it was too strange to be in a phone booth at night in a small town out in the country. And I became lucidly aware. I tell myself, and in my workshops, I tell people, always go to the area of the most energy when you become lucidly aware. And so I looked around, and there was this one building with all of the lights on. And so I decided, okay, I'll go check it out. And I walked up to it and realized it was a church. And so I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting because I'm lucid dreaming and here's this church full of people. And so I decided to walk inside the church, and I saw at the very front of the church was an open casket. And I thought, this is too amazing. So I walked down to the open casket and I look inside of it, and there's a friend of mine looking back at me with his eyes open. And so I look at him and I say, hey, does this mean like you're going to pass away in the next few years or something? And he replied, oh, no. I said, well, does this mean you're going to pass away like in 5 or 10 years? And he said, oh, no. And I couldn't figure out what he was doing in the casket. Now I would have just asked him, what are you doing in the casket with your eyes open? Anyway, so what happened, I woke up, recorded that lucid dream, and the next morning I received an email from that person who said, Robert, guess what? I'm getting married. You can see in that kind of story that I lost my friend, the single guy. I learned at least a day beforehand that he was getting married, because at the front of a church is where we sometimes get married and sometimes also get buried. It was funny to have that kind of symbolic precognitive information come to me in that way.
That's super interesting. It sounds like you're deeply connected to your friendships and have kind of this subconscious communication with each other. That's fascinating. Do you think there'll be devices in the future that would induce lucid dreams?
I think there'll be devices that'll help people become lucidly aware. Already there's some devices out there that help people by flashing red lights into their eyes in the middle of the night. And if the people are prepared when they see red lights to realize, hey, this is a dream, because that's my dream symbol, my dream sign, that can help a person become lucidly aware. But I think as people get into it, that'll be one of the major advancements of lucid dreaming, when some item or technique or approach is brought forth that leads to becoming lucidly aware, 70 or 80% of the time.
Do you think that lucid dreaming, it's like when we're talking about it, it makes me think of remote viewing? I know the military had a group of individuals that were remote viewers that could project themselves to another location. It's kind of like being a spy or something like that. Is that kind of similar to lucid dreaming, or would you consider that more like an out-of-body experience?
So sometimes people who hear me talk about lucid dreaming will come up and say, oh, I do what you do, but I call it shamanic journeying. And so they might have a drum or a drumming tape that they listen to, and then they go on a shamanic journey. You can do something similar in the waking state, like shamanic journeying or possibly like remote viewing. But lucid dreaming, I think, is a little bit special in as much as you're already at this deep level of the unconscious mind. And so the Buddhist dream yoga monks would normally say that an action performed in a lucid dream is 9 times more powerful than one performed in the waking state. And I think the reason is that you're at this deep level of the unconscious. And just like somebody in deep hypnosis or deep trance, is able to stop bleeding or able to do this, that, or the other, some superhuman feat, so too can a lucid dreamer, if they focus their intent properly, can truly do phenomenal things in a lucid dream. There's been some wonderful stories of people who have used lucid dreaming to apparently heal themselves of physical problems. There's been people who have provided their stories to me of emotional healing, of just really fantastically overcoming things. So I think there's a lot of potential out there. And I think that's why lucid dreaming has legs, that it's going to continue. It's one of those things that it really helps if you learn it young, I feel. So if someone listening has kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews, if they're 9 or 10 or 11, I think talking to them about lucid dreaming would be very helpful. But there's a fair amount to lucid dreaming. It's not just becoming aware within the dream that you're dreaming. You also need to know how to stabilize the lucid dream so you don't wake up. Because a lot of beginners, they get so excited that they've become lucidly aware that they just immediately wake up. And then the other thing is learning how to interact with dream figures, because dream figures vary quite a bit in the lucid dream state. And also conceptually how to do things. Like, how do I access creativity, or how do I get information outside of my own knowing in a lucid dream? It really helps to have thought about it beforehand or read a book about it in order to be able to harvest all the potential there.
So my last question is on the Age of Aquarius. What does the Age of Aquarius mean to you?
I'll tell you a curious lucid dream that I had about 4 years ago. I became lucidly aware as I was looking at a woman who had her eyes open, and she was standing next to a man of the same age, but it was obvious that he was asleep, that his eyes were closed. And this woman looked at me very intently, and she said to me, I want you to know that almost 100 years of your time is 1 year to me. And so I had to think about that for a moment, and I thought, well, wait a second. She looks like she's about 35 or so. So I think she's trying to tell me that she's 3,500 years old. And so finally, that kind of washed over me, and I realized, I'm talking to an ancient personality. And then she said to me, I want you to realize that ancient spiritual knowledge is returning to your system. And I thought, wow, she said ancient spiritual knowledge is returning to my system, our system, this waking reality that we all share. I think she said something else, and then that was the end of it. And probably that year, I dreamt of her and this man about 3 more times. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that by the woman being awake and aware and the guy being asleep, it kind of showed me that this inner knowledge is beginning to pervade the inner universe of the mass consciousness. But on an outer level, because the guy was still asleep, as the guy is kind of yang or the waking, that it wasn't being put out there in the waking world. The waking world hadn't quite risen up to it. Whenever I get kind of bummed out by the state of affairs or by international or national events or whatever it is, I always remember this woman. She said that ancient spiritual knowledge was returning to our system. And I have the sense that some of the challenges that we've faced over the last couple of years with the pandemic and other challenges that we look like we're going to be facing in the future, in some regards, are kind of ways of helping us all wake up to kind of spiritually see the changes that we need to make in our beliefs, in our mindset, in our behavior, in our relationship, not only to others, but also to the natural world and other life forms. And by doing that, we can kind of help to usher in a more enlightened age or an age of Aquarius.
I totally agree with that. That's part of the inspiration behind the podcast, is sharing knowledge and wisdom for all of us that are in the age of Aquarius, and how we can work with energy and raise our vibration on a consciousness level. And I think lucid dreaming is a big part of that we can all, work together, even if we're, separated miles apart. I think dreaming is a great way to do that. How can listeners find out more about lucid dreaming, and where can they find your books?
So my 2 books, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, that'll take you about as deep into lucid dreaming as you can imagine. My second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, with my co-author, Carolyn McCready. Both of those could be found at major bookstores, Amazon, other independent booksellers. And also you can find out what I'm up to at my website, lucid-dreaming-advice.com. is one, or the magazine that I co-edit, luciddreamingmagazine.com. But either of those ways, you can check into what kind of workshops I'm giving or where I'm going to, and I'm always happy to answer questions that people might have about lucid dreaming.
Amazing. I'll go ahead and also share the links in our show notes. And I've so enjoyed our conversation. I'm fascinated about lucid dreaming. And I encourage everyone to go check out your website and buy your books to learn more.
Oh, thanks, JC. It's been a lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah, thank you.
You just heard the Age of Aquarius podcast with your host, JC Nova. Remember to subscribe to the show on your favorite streaming platform. Thanks for tuning in.
Age of Aquarius is a cosmic media production and recorded in Los Angeles, California. A special thanks to our producers, Georgie Rutherford and Christopher Lang. To learn more about Age of Aquarius, please visit our website at ageofaquarius.fm. Thanks for listening.